We'll go ahead and get the Audits and Risk Management Committee meeting started. If we could call the roll.
For the State Controller, Ms. Paquin. For the State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Mr. Yamanaka. Ms. Yamamoto. For the State Treasurer, Mr. Rufino. Present. Chairperson Higa, you have a quorum.
Great, thank you very much. I just want to make a few comments before we start the meeting. For this meeting, the board will have a 10-minute public comment period at the end of each agenda item. The public comment will be limited to that agenda item topic, and there will be an additional opportunity for statements from the public for items not pertaining to a specific agenda item at the end of the open session meeting. So any individual who wishes to speak at a board meeting should complete and submit a speaker request form, which is located at the back of the room, and submit that to our CEO or another staff member. Every speaker will be allotted a maximum of 3 minutes for his or her presentation, and if there's not enough time for each speaker to have 3 minutes, then the timing will be at the chair's discretion. The Teachers Retirement Board meetings are live, web streamed, and video archived, and available to the public on calstrs.com. So to protect the privacy of minors who wish to address the board, public commenters under the age of 18 may address the board, but CalSTRS will not live stream or video archive these comments. Public commenters over the age of 18 may be recorded and included in the web stream of this meeting. Members of the public may speak to the board during their allotted time, but audio or visual recordings from a third party are not allowed due to copyright issues. So thank you for accommodating that, and just in terms of understanding what the board's policy is on public comment at each of our committee meetings. So agenda item number 1 is the approval of the committee agenda.
So approved.
Thank you. Okay, so it was a motion by Mr. Rufino and second by Karen Yamamoto. All in favor say aye. Any opposed? Okay, so agenda item number 2 is a consent agenda item. It's an action item for approval of the minutes of the July 11th ARM Committee meeting. Yes. Okay, that's been moved by Karen, seconded by Lynn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. All right, the third item is just a consent item, informational item on the annual report of benefit payment modifications for fiscal year 2018-2019. Is there anything on this topic, or it's just a consent item? So unless there are no questions or objections, move on. Then agenda item number 4 begins our action items, and did you have?
I have something on
Okay.
item 3.
Are you not able to buzz in?
Now I can't. My mic is mute. Is it on now?
You're not showing up in my queue.
I don't have my, here it is.
Okay.
Here it is.
Here we go. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Since I'm fairly new on the committee, I just had on ARM number 12, the charts there. Can you kind of talk about reading the charts and looking across from the increases to the decreases? Is that how we find the net amount, or?
Yes, so I'm gonna
Okay.
actually invite Julie, our CFO, to review that for you. This is prepared by Fiscal Services.
Okay.
Can I ask one of my staff members to come up as well?
Okay, thank you.
And Karen, did you say you're on ARM 12?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Isn't it? Yeah, I'm 12.
So
Those
throughout
2
the-
charts.
Yes. So throughout the report, we've reported to you both the differences in payment increases and payment decreases in total. And so ARM 12 just breaks that up into different benefit types. So service retirements versus disabilities versus survivor benefits, so that you can see from a benefit type perspective how those payment increases or payment decreases are broken up.
Okay. So if we read across, then, for instance, the survivor benefits, you would see what the increases were, and then the decreases were
For each year.
for each year, and so there's no net? Or does it net?
No, we don't, we
just
don't
have
net
an
them out. We
increase.
felt it was important to
Okay.
show you the differences
Okay.
and keep those
All right.
separated.
Okay, got it. All right, thanks.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Okay, well, I think now we'll move to agenda item number 4, which is the beginning of several action items that we have. And I think as people know, our November board meeting is where we receive the results of the audit from our independent auditor, Crow. So I think we have several of our, of the auditors from Crow coming up to join us, and look forward to hearing the presentation.
Yes, I'll give a brief introduction while they're joining us. The education code requires that CalSTRV receive an annual financial audit by an independent CPA firm. And Crow serves as the board's independent financial statement auditor and performs this audit. And actually, today we're going to review 3 different audits that were performed, and there's a lot of information in these, a couple hundred pages of schedules and financial statements and commentary. And Crow has a presentation that they would like to provide the committee that will highlight what are the important aspects of these financial statements and the communications that they're required to give to those charged with governance. Now, these statements are prepared by management, not by Crow. So our own fiscal services prepares all of these statements. The role of the auditor is really to audit that information and then express an opinion on that, and they will highlight their opinion for you today. And so I'm going to turn the time now over to Brenda, and she can introduce the team.
Thank you, Larry. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the Audits and Risk Management Committee. As Larry stated, I am Brenda Torres. I'm an audit partner with Crow. To my left, to your right, we've got Kevin Smith, who's also joining me, and Jen Aris. I would say collectively we serve as the leadership team from Crow, delivering these audit services to CalSTRS. I want to let you know that when we talk about our engagement team, we have a number of individuals that serve CalSTRS that are not with us today. A couple of the individuals are in the room. Several of those individuals are not with us. Our approach is to really bring deep expertise and experience to all of you. Today in the room, in the back of the room, we've got Chris Moore. He's our investments valuation partner. He's been on this engagement since our inception of our relationship with CalSTRS. So Chris is joining us this morning. And then in addition to that, we also have Craig Sullivan. Craig has also been a part of the engagement team since its inception of providing services to you. Craig is actually retiring March 31st of 2020. So this will be his last time probably being with all of you in person. We have replaced Craig with another IT assurance audit partner. His name is Sean Katzenberger. Certain members of management have met Sean, as well as a few select members of the board. And so we use this as a transition period with knowing that Craig's pending retirement was upcoming. So anyway, I just wanted to make sure you had full visibility to our team. As Larry stated, we're really going to focus on the deliverables in terms of what we're asked to do under professional standards. The first thing I want to do, though, is maybe just make some opening comments from my perspective relative to the various services, and in particular, the audits. First and foremost, I want to commend management for their hard work as it relates to the audit process. Each member of management has daily roles and responsibilities that are very voluminous. And then on top of that, we come in, and I would say that we're doing a continuous audit, which means that, we're auditing all year round just due to the size and magnitude of the work that we need to do and the complexity associated with the organization. We make hundreds of requests of management for information and inquiries. They are very responsive to us. When I think about, through my lens, what the organization is currently going through, you've got a new pension solution that's being implemented. You've got a new building that you're undertaking. You've got bond financing associated with that building. You've got the collaborative model that investments is working on. So there are all these different initiatives, then your day-to-day responsibilities, and then you have the auditors. And I guess the perspective that I would like to provide to all of you is we're actually going to share really good news today, just in terms of the results of our audit work. And that's a true testament to staff in terms of the effort that they put forth and the rigor around your internal control structure. For me, I would say that really starts with tone at the top. Your executive leadership team is excellent. I think they have a tone at the top in terms of the importance of financial reporting and transparency and a solid internal, framework, internal control framework. That cascades through the entire organization. And then frankly, you just hire really good people. And I think you have an agenda item later today where you're going to talk about the collaborative model and building out the investments team. And I would just encourage you, even resources beyond that. You're going to need resources to manage that collaborative model, but you're also going to have resources to account for it. So again, I'm just very impressed with management. We've been doing this work for a long time. Our process is robust. We always have unpredictability in our audit, and they do continue to impress me. So I think management should really be competitive, so we want to give them a round of applause. Oh, come on, everybody. It's early. Let's go. Okay, so Kevin's going to cover the independent auditor's report. Jen's going to go through required communications to those charged with governance. I'm going to talk a little bit about internal controls. As always, we welcome your comments throughout the presentation, so please don't be shy because we are here to serve you. Kevin?
Thank you. Again, Kevin Smith with Crow. It's my pleasure to be here, Madam Chair, as well as other members of the ARM. I'd like to go over our independent auditor's report, and really it encompasses 4 elements. Management's responsibility, as Larry alluded to in his opening. The financial statements as well as the internal controls around those financial statements are the responsibility of management. We'll walk briefly through what the auditor's responsibility and the auditing standards that we perform our procedures under, as well as the results of our audit. We'll also spend a little bit of time on 2 emphasis of matters. A couple key points on those before we even get to them is that they have no impact upon our opinion. So again, an unmodified opinion that we'll talk about, but in reality, what it's saying is to the readers of the financial statements, there are a couple elements embedded within the financial statements that are of such importance that we believe as a reader you should go particularly there to understand, and we'll walk through each of those. So as you see on ARM page 18, management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of these financial statements. I can tell you that within the industry, sometimes that role and responsibility is outsourced to auditors and or third-party preparers. As Brenda said, you have an incredibly technical and competent finance team. They prepare these voluminous pages of financial statements and disclosures all on their own. They also have, as Brenda alluded to, they're responsible for the design, the implementation, and maintenance of an internal control structure that is designed to ensure that those financial statements are free from material misstatement, whether due to error or fraud. So we look at those internal controls and we've noted no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses that we'll refer to later. Our responsibility is very voluminous in that we are ultimately opining upon the financial statements. And ultimately we have to reach reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from material misstatement. We do that in a variety of ways. We have a robust risk assessment. We understand the internal control structure so that we can design appropriate test work to understand how the financial statements are prepared, as well as we look at significant judgments and estimates embedded within the financial statements, and overall try to assess those both from a qualitative and quantitative standpoint to understand that the financial statements are presented appropriately. Based upon our audit evidence, we believe that the financial statements are prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles and are supported by the books and records of the system. So that's the highest level of assurance that an auditor can provide, and we're going to get into some other detail as we go into the communications charge to governance, which I really think is important to understand the opinion and how we arrived at that and what, as board members, you should know. The 2 emphasis of matters that I referred to, and each one of them, as you see the last sentence of the paragraph, our opinion is not modified as it relates to these matters. They were significant areas of focus within our audit. The first being the net pension liability of employer and non-employer contributing entity. And really what this is trying to tell you is that the $90 billion in the net pension liability, that is really subject to a lot of estimates that are brought before the board and approved by the board, as well as management. each of those estimates can have a significant impact upon ultimately what's reported within the financial statements. So although we believe them to be not unreasonable, I can also tell you that over the course of the next 70 years, that is not going to be the number that is ultimately paid out. But we do believe that it is the best estimate as of June 30, 2019. And the page on ARM 19, as well as information that you see within the footnotes, really walks through what those assumptions and the impact that it could have on that liability. The second key estimate is the fair value of the alternative investments. And this is really focused upon the risk associated with the fair value. It's not related to the risk associated with the investments. So as part of generally accepted accounting principles, we have three classifications really, or four classifications of investments. Level 1, 2, and 3. We're really creative with how we bucket things, as well as something deemed NAV or net asset value. All we're saying is that in level 1 or 2, there are observable market inputs, whether it be that they're actively traded on the market or there's observable inputs such as U.S. Treasuries, and you can arrive at a price that almost everybody else would understand to be fair value. The level 3, whether it be directly held real estate, alternative investments, there's a significant reliance upon the GPs to arrive at what they believe the net asset value or fair value to be. So that's all this paragraph is really saying. It's not about the underlying risk of the investments. It's just that it is based upon a fair value estimate versus observable inputs.
Okay, next we're going to walk through some required communications to those charged with governance. And so I'll walk through a highlight of the information that's included in your package on ARM 95. At the conclusion of every audit standards, both generally accepted in the United States as well as governmental audit standards, require that we communicate certain matters. And so these are items that we would communicate at the conclusion of every audit. We actually met with the committee back in March and communicated the planned scope and timing of our audit procedures, which included, as Brenda said, some year-round audit procedures. We're really focused on this engagement year-round and have certain parts of the audit that we pay attention to, from risk assessment, control assessment, and then substantive testing procedure process. We have a field team that's here for the majority of the May-June timeframe, as well as late August into September. So there's a real concentration of efforts around that time. Regarding planning our audit, as Kevin mentioned, we do perform a pretty robust risk assessment. We take a close look at internal controls as it relates to the planning of our audit procedures. And we also apply a concept referred to as materiality, using both qualitative and quantitative factors. In particular, for this engagement, as we think about accounting policies and estimates that management utilizes in preparing the financial statements, we pay close attention to some of the things that you see listed here, including the fair value of investment securities, as well as the assumptions that are included in the actuarial calculations. We also are closely monitoring the new pension solution, knowing that that is not yet within the scope of the audit, but will become part of the financially significant systems, or those systems that are driving financial information in the near future. And as it relates to significant or unusual items, one matter that came to our attention this year was recognizing the revenue for contributions received under Senate Bill 90 and the timing of the recognition of those contributions. Go to the next slide, please. We also closely evaluate the qualitative aspects of accounting, and so making sure that accounting policies that are being applied are as expected or are consistent with industry standard. We take close look at corrected or uncorrected misstatements, so really looking to see if there are any audit adjustments that are necessary to the financial statements that are presented for our audit procedures, and are very happy to report that there were no uncorrected or corrected misstatements as a part of this year's audit, so that's really positive news. And then we have a number of other communication items. So part of our audit procedures include looking at other documents that may contain the audited financial information. So we pay close attention to the management discussion and analysis piece that accompanies the audited financial statements, the supporting schedules that are included with the financial statements, and then we'll be looking at the CAFR that's prepared and published later in the year. If we were to have any difficulties in working with management or encountered through the audit, or if we were aware of management consulting with other accountants, we would bring that to the attention of the committee, but there are no significant items there to report. And we did not have any other significant issues as it related to the audit. We do work through a process at the end of the audit with management related to a representation letter that is signed and provided back to us at the conclusion of the audit process from your management team, and that's also available for your review. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so the last item is really the independent auditor's report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance and other matters based on an audit that's conducted in accordance with government auditing standards. So as both Jen and Kevin both stated, we obtain a sufficient understanding of internal controls in order to plan the audit, but we are not expressing an opinion on internal controls. So our consideration of internal controls is for that limited purpose, to plan and design our audit procedures. So it is possible that there could be deficiencies that are out there that are significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. But what I can report to you is that based on the work that we did, both from a controls perspective and even through our substantive procedures, nothing came to our attention that rose to the level of a significant deficiency or material weakness. So again, that's when I point to management is to really be commended for their work. This is an area in which the organization has grown tremendously since I've had a relationship with CalSTRS. And again, with all the moving parts and pieces and everything that's going on, these are excellent, excellent results to report. And with that, we would be happy to entertain any questions that members of the ARM Committee would have.
Harry?
Thank you, Joy. I would just ask, thank you for the presentation, and obviously pleased to see that it's an unmodified audit, and I commend the staff and Crow for the work. I had a chance to speak with Kevin, and he indicated it was approximately, I think he said 12,000 hours of work for this item to come before us. I thought it might be helpful for the record just to hear from Bob, our consultant, Dr. Yemen, on his views relative to the audit itself and any other comments that you have.
I'd be happy to. Would you like me to wait until the?
No,
You want me now?
Yeah, right now.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
right now. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Member Kili. So I do have a few questions and a few comments. So I'll start with the questions and direct them to the auditors. The first question relates to a comment you made earlier, which you referred to as the tone at the top. I would like to press you just a little further on that if I could. And in particular, the tone at the top, and by the top I mean the Chief Executive Officer, Operating and Financial Officer. And with respect to their understanding of the necessity of a strong internal control system. Can you address that, please?
Yep, sure. I'll take the first stab at that. So when you're talking about Jack, Cassandra, and Julie, right? Okay, so we'll put names to this. We meet with them throughout the audit process. I would say that, we meet with Julie as the audit continues, but certainly Jack and Cassandra at very specific points in time. And I would just say the tone is very important in terms of internal controls. I feel like maybe there's a little profiling going on, but when I enter the building and I go through the kiosk to access upstairs, it's inevitable. Every morning I do it on the TV in front of me. It talks about the importance of internal controls over financial reporting. So you can't miss it around the organization. And so I think I've just observed that in everything that we do. They're very involved in the audit process. They care about the work that we do and the work that management is doing. Certainly, if we would find anything as a part of our audit procedures, they want to know because they want to address it. The good news is we haven't had anything to share with them. But the tone around internal controls, is very evident, and there's been progress that's been made. Specifically, I think you're going to talk a little bit later about a deficiency over member data. And for those of you that have been on the ARM committee for a long period of time, in our first few years, that was a material weakness, and it was a very collaborative effort with leadership, with Cassandra and Larry and others in the organization and across many branches of the organization to really remediate that deficiency. And it was very severe, and now it's not. And so I really think when you have leaders that step up to the table, not only do they have the appropriate tone, but I think their actions speak a little bit louder than their words. So that's how I would state that. I guess I would also go on to say that I think all of you have definitely shared with us that you also think it's very important in terms of your role as those charged with governance. You want to add something?
The only thing I would add, and in complete agreement with everything that Brenda has said, but over the course of our relationship with CalSTRS, I'd say, I would define tone at the top just a little bit different than what Brenda and Dr. Yemen have. The ARM committee has been instrumental, and the tone that is established right here by the people in front of me. Management has done a tremendous job, but that was not without the support and the approval of those charged with governance, which is yourselves. So I am a huge fan of every individual that Brenda just mentioned, but without the proper tone at the top at the board, I don't know that they would necessarily be able to function at the level that they do. So I would say we also evaluate the responsibilities of those charged with governance and how that impacts the audit and the internal control, and we're very pleased there as well.
Thank you. My next question resolves around cooperation, the organization's cooperation with the audit and your audit inquiry, the process, and in particular, if you could comment on the cooperation, the level of cooperation you received from 3 separate divisions: audit services, the investments branch, and financial reporting.
Yeah, I can take the lead there as well, and they can chime in. So let's talk with audit services first. Larry has a very strong team. They are very involved in everything that we do, participate in many of the meetings that we have with the branches, stay on top of the audit process, and are really assist us in getting us the information that we need to do our job efficiently and effectively. As a part of our audit procedures, we also evaluate the work that Larry and his team is doing. Larry does a great job. I'm on the distribution list of any internal audit reports that all of you are receiving. I receive those real time, so I don't have to wait until year-end field work to understand what's going on during the year, because I'm accessing that information on a real-time basis, which I really appreciate. As it relates to the investment branch, wow, really, really large team. So we actually kind of segregate the team just like they do within the organization by asset class. So we try to liaison with each of them, I think, by asset class and go through their internal controls. We make requests of various individuals throughout the investments branch. I think their directors of each of those asset classes have been very supportive of everything that we're trying to do in terms of the information that we're trying to gain. And then Deborah and April and Shafat as well have also been very supportive. If we run into some challenges or we have some questions, they're always right there to support us immediately. And then you said financial services? Yeah, can't say enough about that team. Very strong team. I would say from my perspective, Julie came into the organization in a very good position with the team that was built and that was going to report to her. And in my observation, that team has not missed a beat in the transition of CFOs, and they continue to produce not only great year-end financial reports, but they actually produce an interim financial statement for us as of March 31st. We don't opine on that interim financial statement, but we certainly utilize it as a part of our planning procedures and our risk assessment. And I'm very impressed as to the completeness and accuracy of that report at March 31st as well. So I don't know, Bob, if you're fishing for something, but I'm not sure that we have anything to add, because I think we feel really good about the quality of the team. Do you want to add something?
I would add 2 things. And one, I think Brenda covered when she referred to the financial services branch. But as a general reminder, actuarial now reports through financial services as well. And I would just say that our interactions with the 2 actuaries and their team, incredible as well. high technical competency, respected leaders within the industry, and we put them through the ringer, and they always come out well. The other, I would say, MAS spends a significant amount of time with us as well, and I just want to highlight that they work really well with us as well, and not to be forgotten.
What is MAS?
Member Account Services.
I appreciate these comments, but I'd like to just add one more dimension for the committee there, is because these auditors work for the board, right? They're the board's independent financial statement auditor, and in our capacity as well in facilitating the audit project, we oversee the contract for the board, and we manage that. And one important aspect of that is for the financial statement auditor to remain independent and objective in all of their work. And so one of the roles that we also play on your behalf is we monitor that activity throughout the organization. And so we make sure that they're not asked to do things that would be, infringe upon their independence or objectivity, and we provide oversight of that throughout the course of the audit, throughout the course of the year. And so I just want to let the committee know that we do keep our eye on that on your behalf.
Thank you. Gary, yeah.
Thank you.
Did you have something?
All right,
Oh, sorry.
moving
Just
on.
had, Dr. Yevon, just one other comment relative to the area of I think you call it the area of focus, the first point, the projected liability. I just can't help but think of connecting the dots of the important decision we made yesterday around the asset liability study, the funding plan, which pushes on a trajectory, but it's based on a lot of assumptions. But your focus on that as well, I think, needs to, from my perspective, needs really to be where a lot of our energy and focus needs to be brought to. There are so many distractions and, from my perspective, outside noise that we get pulled away to, when the reality is the real issue from my perspective is how do we ensure that this fund is solid and solvent well into the future. And a lot of the decisions we made, the decision we made yesterday will help us in the short run with asset liability study. And they're all based on assumptions and projections. But at the heart of the matter is the point that you laid out in point number 1 of area of focus. So it's more of it's a comment, not a question. But I thank you for highlighting that's the area of focus, or area that you're first concern for us.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments and thoughts. So now I want to shift tone a little bit and discuss the team that Crow has brought. So as they mentioned, Craig will be leaving. Is Craig back? Where's he at? There he is. Sitting in the back. Next to Chris. So when Crow brings their team to the audit, and they have since the very first day, they bring what I would call their A team. Now that could sound goofy, but it's honest. They bring what I would call a partner-heavy team, no fewer than 4, sometimes 5 director, and these are the best people in their organization for that particular skill set. With respect to pension auditing, governmental auditing, Mr. Smith is the king of the hill. He's the best talent they've got. He's sharp. And then you've known Brenda, the signing partner, for a number of years now. She doesn't miss a beat. She runs a tight ship and maintains her independence while at the same time providing a sense of openness and engagement with the staff, and engagement with the board, and engagement with me, but at all times remaining that important level of, keeping that important level of independence from the organization, clearly working for you and only you. The loyalty is to you. And that's a fine line, it's a hard line to do, and to bring high level of competence to that is something that she's particularly skillful at. So Craig, who is leaving, has worked on the information technology side. He is a partner, and he brings, well, obviously he's retiring, so he brought years and years of knowledge and wealth to that environment. However, I spent some time last night with his replacement, and I can say that we're being left in good hands. And then Chris, who's sitting actually next to Craig, one of my favorite people in the engagement, because we get to talk about geeky stuff like asset valuations. So you can remember one of the emphasis of a matter, for example, that was brought before you was valuing these difficult-to-value asset categories. Well, CalPERS, Crow brings an auditor specifically for that purpose, just a partner who rolls in and says, okay, this is my area. Those valuations come from the GPs and roll up into CalSTRS' hands. CalSTRS is responsible for the numbers, but Crow takes their job very seriously in reviewing those numbers and looking at the reasonableness of those numbers with the expertise they bring. And then, of course, at the end of the table is sort of who runs the job, Jen. And so when I was an auditor, I was running jobs as a heavy senior. I had like 3 years in. She's a director and she's running jobs. Your job is being run by an unusually experienced team. And now that does make it very costly for the Crow team to do this. But they put that aside, and because they know this is an important client. For example, yesterday they brought their chairman of the board to come visit with some board members. So they know that this is an important audit for them for many reasons, and they take care of it that way. And I am personally very grateful for the quality of team they bring. And yeah, I'll miss you, Craig. All right, moving on. Ms. Underwood, your CFO came in and to a very large organization with a lot of moving parts and has been very successful in assimilating vast amounts of knowledge. And then you go ahead and decide you want to build a building, and then you decide you want to do some bond financing, and then you thought you might update your IT system on the way. And she just walked right into that, along with everything else that has to go on a day-to-day basis running the organization. And so to get a set of financial statements like this with the level of cooperation and knowledge that she's been able to provide is simply outstanding. So welcome to your first year here, Ms. Underwood. I'm very glad you're here. And then I'm going to leave you with this. The success of any organization, and in particular these sets of financial statements, is predicated on the work of those who are not at this table. It's predicated on the work of the worker bees, the ones who come to work every day, have been working on the financial statements week after week, month after month. The staff auditors under Larry, the staff accountants under Ms. Underwood, and the unsung heroes who work and just toil away at this and don't get to sit up here and you say thank you to them. So the board is my loyalty. The auditors, they got my respect, but those guys, they got my heart. So, my last issue is retention. So I know this isn't in my purview, but I'm going to stick my nose in here anyway because you let me. So I think retaining those staff, those auditors, those accountants, and in an economy like we've got that's firing on all engines, I know that there are so many job opportunities that these talented staff could find. In fact, Mr. Yamanaka and I just had a very brief conversation in which he said, well, yeah, we're having trouble hiring auditors as well. And so I don't know where that goes because it's out of my bailiwick and I'm sticking my nose someplace it shouldn't be, and I apologize in advance. But I really do feel that finding a way to, I'll use those words, retain, train, make them feel loved, the staff who work so hard to roll these numbers up underneath is important, especially in a very competitive environment and given the constraints that a state organization like CalSTRS has. So that's my last thought, other than thank you for having me here. I love my job. Thank you.
Dr. Yetman, thank you very much, both for the questions that you posed that I think raise issues for the committee to hear about and consider, but also for your comments. And I'm not sure that anybody up here could say it any better than you just did. So thank you very much for doing that. Are there any other questions from the committee on 4A? I do just have one question that I wanted to ask. In your opening comments, and Dr. Yetman also referred to some of the really big projects that we have, with Pension Solution, our new building, the bond issue, the collaborative model. And I think, Brenda, either you or Kevin talked about how, as we start to implement Pension Solution, and I think start to see reporting flow through that is when I think there would be that's when there will be activity or information that will sort of more formally become a part of the audit process in the future. I think I just wanted to clarify, because we have a couple, I think, of different levels of oversight of that project. So in terms of future review of pension solution through our audit, that really is looking at the accuracy of the data that's reported through pension solution. But in terms of implementation of the project, meeting milestones, budget, that continues to be something that's managed by, by Ashish and is sort of overseen by another one of our consultants, Grant Thornton, that reviews that project. So it's we've got a couple of levels of oversight.
Yeah, Joy, that was actually very well said. I don't know that I have a lot to add other than you clarified. It's certainly not in scope. It will become in scope when the new pension solution is producing material data that drives the numbers and the financial statements that we're asked to opine upon. Certainly, Ashish and his team do a good job of providing a level of transparency to us. We are certainly following that implementation. We want to make sure that we're most efficient and effective and perform our procedures at the right time, depending on the progress that the organization makes. But to your point, in terms of meeting milestones, what the budget looks like, that is definitely not our role and responsibility. And you name those individuals and consultants that are responsible for that. So that, I think that was well said, but good clarification.
I think it's important to add, though, Brenda, that, a year ago, we actually started coordinating with the financial statement auditors and the pension solution team as to the timing of when the system will become financially significant and when that financial data starts flowing through it and the importance of the accuracy of that. And so this is not something that, we're trying to coordinate that now. And we've been working on that. As I said, we started our conversations last year. And so, we're ramping up to it. And I think that it will just want to let you know that we're all kind of coordinating and keeping our eye on that too.
Well said.
Okay, well, I think if there are no other questions on 4A, I think Larry, do we take action now?
Yeah, this is an action item, and so we're recommending that the committee accept this and also approve the resolution that's on ARM 105.
Okay, I'm sorry, Harry had a question first.
I was gonna make a motion to move adoption of the resolution, which is on ARM 105, and acceptance of the approve and accept the audited independent audit statement presented by Crow.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. So it was moved by Harry and seconded by Karen. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Harry.
In addition to the basic financial statement audit that's performed, there's actually 2 other audits that are performed. And these are listed on page 4B. And again, there are expressions of opinions and required communications that the auditor will deliver.
Okay, thank you, Larry. So as Larry stated, CalSTRS has hired Crow to also issue additional opinions, very specific to a couple of different accounting standards. We're going to go through the scope of those services. They primarily relate to the STRIP, or the State Teachers Retirement Plan, or what I call the MP3, the Medicare Premium Payment Program. Because we've been engaged to conduct that work under generally accepted auditing standards as well as government auditing standards, our deliverables are the same. So we've got our independent auditors report, the required communications to all of you as those charged with governance, and our reports on internal controls. Just so that we can simplify this, we'll really try to touch on the highlights and maybe the things that are different than what we already presented, because you're going to find, if you've already read those in their entirety, there is some duplication as required by the standards. So with that, as I stated, the purpose of this information is to really assist the contributing entities or the employers of the system to really comply with a couple of different accounting standards. One is GASB 68, so they can actually calculate and assist their auditors with their proportionate share of the net pension liability of the STRIP. So we perform some procedures very specific to that. And then under GASB 75, as it relates to the Medicare Premium Payment Program and the net OPEB liability that's driven off of that. So these are not required by GAAP, but again, we've been hired to do this. I would say the approach that management's taking is best in class. There are other systems that are taking similar approaches. I think what this does is it really hopefully either eliminates or minimizes the employers and their auditors coming to CalSTRS and seeking additional information and having to perform their own audit procedures on that same information so they can get comfortable with those respective amounts. One item I do want to highlight in each of the reports that Kevin's going to go over, the independent auditors reports, there is a paragraph that's talked about the restriction of use. So there's a very specific use with respect to these opinions, and so we put this opinion in here to make that very explicit. And again, in addition to all of you and CalSTRS management, this is really intended for the employers or contributing entities and their auditors to rely on this information. So, did I skip a page here? No. So one item that's really important to note, when Kevin shared his opinion on CalSTRS financial statements, we're opining on those financial statements as a whole. So if you reflect on the statement of fiduciary net position and the statement of changes therein, there are multiple columns. We are not opining on each of those columns. We're really opining on the total column. And then when you think about it, I'm going to show a slide. You know, CalSTRS in terms of, from a material perspective, it's primarily the strip. When you look at the other pension information, we are actually issuing 4 or 5 different opinions. So the first opinion that we're issuing is on the schedule of proportionate share of contributions for employers and non-employer contributing entities. So we're not opining on the total here. We're not opining on each of the percentages in terms of each employer's proportionate share, but we're opining on the schedule as a whole. And there's a significant amount of effort that goes into auditing the schedule, in addition to the work that management is putting forth to prepare the schedule. When you get to the schedule of aggregate pension amounts for employers and non-employer contributing entity, we are issuing separate opinions on these 3 elements of the schedule: the net pension liability as of June 30th, 2019, the total deferred outflows of resources, and the total deferred inflows of resources. So when you read our opinion, it's very specific to these 4 different elements. And what this requires us to do is, because we're issuing different opinions, we actually have to apply materiality at each of these opinion units. So that materiality threshold is very different than the materiality that Jen spoke to that we apply at the financial statement level of CalSTRS as a whole. As it relates to the Medicare premium payment program, you're going to find that the schedules of proportionate share are very similar. There's one distinct and unique difference. The state contribution is not included in this particular schedule because they don't have a responsibility as it relates to this particular program. So that is the only difference that you'll find when you look at the contributions in total. And then in addition to that, the allocation of the proportionate share changes a little bit when you pull the state out. So we're also issuing an opinion on this schedule as a whole. In addition to that, you have the aggregate other post-employment benefits amounts. So again, separate opinions on the net OPEB liability, the total deferred outflows of resources, and the total deferred inflows of resources. So we try to put a chart together just to illustrate to all of you just again, that concept of materiality. And so when you think about it, management is designing their internal controls to produce these financial statements as well. And so in the blue color is CalSTRS as a whole, and yellow is the strip, so you can see they're very, very similar. And then the Medicare premium payment program, you kind of can't even see it. It's kind of like a floor here. So again, the unique perspective is management sets a materiality, they design their internal controls, we have to do our risk assessment and apply procedures to get comfortable with issuing opinions on those amounts. And if you look at the Medicare premium payment program, those amounts are actually very small. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Kevin, who's going to highlight the differences between the information that he already shared with respect to the OPI and the OPEB.
Thank you, Brenda, and in a lot of respects, Brenda's already teed this up very well for me. So I think the biggest key difference is the restriction on use. So this is not for the general public. This is for your employers and their auditors. And it's not on the financial statements taken as a whole. It's on each individual line item that is specified within our opinion. That includes the schedule of proportionate share, which again for the OPI or the other pension information includes the state contributions. Again, we focus on just the contributions. So the difference between, if I think about the contributions for the financial statements, they're material, but not real material. When I think about the schedule of proportionate share, that is all it is. So we spend a significant amount of time based upon understanding the internal control structure, the policies, and procedures in place to generate that schedule. Significant amount of time focused upon that year-end cutoff for the estimation of accruals. We also issue an individual opinion within the letter that addresses the total pension liability, as well as the deferred outflows of resources and the deferred inflows of resources. The best way I can describe those two line items is they are very conceptual, based upon some people from Norwalk, Connecticut. Other than the use by your contributing entities within the financial statements, it's really not relevant to any management decisions. It's purely an accounting concept to try to match liabilities and assets and things that don't quite meet that definition. As a result of our audit, we have issued unmodified opinions on each of those elements that we just spoke to. And we included an emphasis of matter, again, based upon the significance of the estimate, as Mr. Kili spoke to as well. It is incredibly important, the assumptions embedded within the total pension liability. And ultimately, that $90 billion is spread across all of your contributing entities, and they pick up their proportionate share of that liability. So we've just, again, outlined the same key assumptions so that a user could understand the impact that it has upon the number that they're ultimately booking. Very similar, we have the same auditor responsibilities under GAS and GAGAS that I outlined in the audit of the financial statements. We communicated to you at the beginning of the audit what our plan, scope, and timing of the audits would be. There were no deviations within those, within our audit plan. And we really focus in three key areas in the current year. Again, that schedule of proportionate share. One, the completeness and accuracy, for lack of better words, of the true cash basis, as well as the estimation process of the receivables, both at the beginning of the year and at the end of the year. Significant amount of time spent on the net pension liability. This is really what drives my earlier comment about our interaction with member account services. We go to over 100 of your contributing entities. We audit payroll, non-payroll information of your members, and it ultimately drives the ability to issue our opinion here. As well as Jen mentioned in the current year, kind of an unusual transaction right at year end with Senate Bill 90. Again, here's a chance to plug what management has done. They did their research, they understood how they should account for it, and we concurred with their treatment, both from a financial statement perspective as well as how they treated it on the schedule of proportionate share.
Picking up with the remainder of the communications here, we again look at the qualitative aspects of significant accounting practices as it relates to those that are applied in preparing this information, and had no issues as it related to differences with industry standard. We also look at corrected and uncorrected misstatements as it relates specifically to these items that both Brenda and Kevin have outlined for us. We did not have any corrected misstatements through the performance of these audit procedures. However, there is one uncorrected misstatement that is actually a carryover item from the June 30, 2015 audit that was performed. And this is a matter of the way that the information becomes amortized over a number of years. And so this is just the continued runoff, if you will, of the impact of that immaterial amount that was identified as an uncorrected misstatement back at that time. So in the coming year, that will actually roll off and no longer be an item reported to the committee. And then again, as it relates to other communications, if we would have had any disagreements or difficulties in performing the audit, we would have brought that to the committee's attention early in the process, but we are not aware of any such instances. Other consultants with other accountants. We have gone over the information as it relates to the internal control opinion that we're issuing with you, and there were no other items that we felt to bring to the attention of the committee of significance.
So then just to go off the concept of materiality and management's responsibility around internal controls as it relates to the other pension information, those 4 specific items that we opine upon. Again, I'm pleased to report no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses in that test work that we did. So again, management's to be commended for that and all those different amounts that we opine upon.
I'll outline just a few differences because unless I outline it as a difference, our opinion is very consistent with what we just spoke of as it relates to the other post-employment or the other pension information. So we also issue an independent auditor's report related to the other post-employment benefits. To put it in CalSTRS speak, that's the MP3 or the Medicare premium program. I really want to highlight back to the chart that Brenda shared when it was basically a floor. So we design our procedures, our understanding of internal control, as well as our substantive nature, our substantive test work designed at a very, very low level. I point that out because I also try to think about if I was sitting in your chairs, what I should be concerned about, what I shouldn't be. We're opining upon this, so we treated it as if it was material. But go back to that bar chart as well. From an ARM committee perspective, the entire program is not material, so it's something to really keep in mind. But with that said, we have performed our engagement. We have issued our opinion upon the financial statement, or upon the schedules, and each one of those elements that I referred to. We've issued an unmodified opinion, again, the highest level of assurance. And we have also, again, included an emphasis of matter. It's also related to the estimation process of determining the total liability. However, you do note that there are certain assumptions that are slightly different here from the pension information. Healthcare trend rates, what we anticipate Medicare Part B and A to be. So it's really based upon the key assumptions for this program specifically and the impact that it could have on the liability.
Our communications to those charged with governance here are very similar to what we just covered. I would highlight that we focus our analysis of critical accounting policies and significant estimates on the areas that Kevin just highlighted. I would also highlight for the committee that different than the last schedule that we just reviewed, we do not have any uncorrected misstatements as it relates to this schedule and the calculations here. So there's no carry forward impacting this schedule, but no other communications that are different than what we've highlighted previously.
And then again, on the report related to internal controls, again, no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. So I'll highlight again the concept of materiality, and management has to design controls relative to the materiality thresholds of all the amounts for the Medicare premium payment program that we're opining on, and no significant deficiencies and material weaknesses were noted. So with that, we'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Are there any questions from the committee? Harry?
If there are no questions for the committee or commentary from, I think, Dr. Yemen, you want to comment? Because I was going to make a motion to, why don't I make a motion and then you could comment anyway. Okay, so I'll make a motion for the committee to approve the recommendation as found on ARM 109. Rather than reading it's quite lengthy. As written on ARM 109 is the motion for approval.
So Karen will second. Thank you very much. Dr. Yemen?
Thank you. Just a quick comment. With regards to the schedule of proportionate share, this really is a service done by CalSTRS for the school districts to assist them, and it really is a best practice. It's something the organization does not have to do. It's something that's very costly to do. Just by weight alone, it's almost half the report. But it's a lot of work that goes in to this, and then it gets looked at by the auditors. So my real quick question is, so we have some new board members, maybe just really briefly, could we explain to the board how this benefits the school districts, what the school districts will do with these numbers, and are they required to do anything with these numbers? Just perhaps briefly.
There is one hard part of that question, to do that just briefly. So